Shalom, greetings and blessings to each and every one of you, those who are there on the other side of the screen. Welcome once again to a new meeting of Voices of Israel Global, as you know, within the Voices of Israel YouTube channel. There are several ways to connect with us, but not only several ways to connect with us, but you also have several ways there to learn about Israel. One of them is, as you already know, discovering Israel with the Bible in hand. By the way, we are starting a new season again, and we hope to have the new videos ready in the coming days so we can share them with you and you can learn much more about the land of Israel. And also, as you know, there is a lot of material that I think is very relevant and very important so that you can, during this time, learn much more about the scriptures. We have been studying the book of Daniel. We started this whole journey of studying the scriptures, and we have also been studying the book of Revelation. We got involved with the book of Genesis, and last week we returned again with the book Jesus, specifically from Genesis. But before we continue and dive fully into the chapter that we are about to enter in these coming days. That is, what do we mean by coming days? We actually have to enter chapter 16 today. I wanted to pause, not just a little, but to be able to give a brief explanation. That's why today's message will be somewhat connected to the reality of the nation of Israel. Many of you are asking us, like, how is the situation in Israel today? You know that these days we are going through very special days. We are going through rather delicate days when we don't know exactly what will happen tomorrow. And that the borders, the entire border territory of Israel today is in a very delicate situation in terms of power. To move around there, I mean, you can be anywhere in Israel, but not in the border area. It's better to stay away because it's actually the army itself that's saying don't get close and all that. These days we've seen and you've witnessed that the movies you sometimes watch, which seem like they couldn't happen, actually can. What happens in real life? We've seen real life as if it were a movie. What has been happening these past few days, specifically in the territory with Lebanon, with the Vipers, with the walkie-talkies? Many people started to get scared, even to the point of leaving their phones behind. The phone watches, copies, sees, and listens to me. That's true, but exploding is another matter. Well, it's not really like that, so don't worry about that. Your phone isn't going to explode, but yes. If you get involved in something that's against Israel, and if you join Israel's enemies, then we can assure you that nothing bad could happen. Why? Because Israel has special protection. Israel has a special wisdom that they've had to practice for years. For years, they've had to be practical in everything related to security. That's why today it's one of the leading nations when it comes to computer intelligence to protect its citizens. And someone might say to us today, but what happened on October 7th? Exactly. The nation of Israel is more prepared for sophisticated threats, but less prepared for unsophisticated ones. Because October 7th was an attack by a group of wild people on motorcycles attacking a town that was celebrating a holiday. Has that happened to Israel before? And it will have to take the necessary measures so that it doesn't happen again in the future. But as you and I know, the world and the nations and the enemy, specifically the enemy. First of all, it's the one who stirs up the nations to go against the chosen people, specifically against the nation of Israel. And today what I want to do with you in the study we're going to start today is that I want to share about Psalms 83. And you might ask me, but what does Psalm 83 have to do with the book of Genesis? It has a lot to do with it, and now you will understand what I want to explain to you. Do you remember that in the book of Genesis? Let me go look for it. Genesis. We were looking at Genesis chapter 15. If you can go quickly, get your Bible. While I'm also looking for mine here. Remember, we arrived nearly at the very last chapters. I had reminded you and shared with you about how Abraham had asked God to make a covenant with him. Remember that he says, I don't have any problems, I can't have children, no, I won't have anyone to give to. Everything we've done, everything I've worked for. And I explained to them and told them that the Middle East is somewhat different from the West. He wasn't referring to leaving material wealth, but for them, the most important thing is to pass on the family name or to be called son of. Remember that we talked about Yeshua ben Yosef, Shlomo ben David. We always say that you are the son of someone. So that's the progression, the inheritance. That's the most important thing you have to leave to the next generation. So Abraham said, I'm not going to have a next generation except for that Damascene, that one from Damascus who is Eliezer, who, by the way, was someone very loyal to Abraham, someone who did many good things with Abraham. He wasn't related by blood, so Abraham wanted someone who was. The Lord says, I will give it to you. Remember, I brought you out with a promise from where I took you. I brought you out with a promise and took you to a place, and I didn't forget that I brought you out with a promise. I took you to a place where I said you would inherit this place and that you would also have descendants there. That is to say, your descendants were going to live in it. So, in a way, the Lord was already telling him in advance, where are you going to have children? In fact, remember that at one point he tells him, look at the sky, count the stars, because that's the whole family I'm going to give you. Abraham says to him, let's make a covenant. Remember how important covenants were in ancient times. It's not like the covenant we know today, or the contract we know today. We find a notary and sign, then a lawyer and sign. It wasn't like today. Things were different in the past. And the one who had made his part of the covenant, the one who had to fulfill this contract, was God himself. So we've seen how he told Abraham, go and bring the animals, put them on the path, and split them. And it says that when Abraham wakes up, he starts to see that pillar of fire walking between the animals. We saw all of that in Genesis chapters 15 and 16. At the end. So when he says to him, I'm going to give you all this place. And remember that we saw the map last week that I had shown you. What does Israel have today, and what does it still need to recover in terms of physical territory in the land of Israel? It still has a lot to recover according to the promise that was given to Abraham. So today we are seeing, hearing, and witnessing a conflict that is happening in Israel. And we are a generation privileged to be able to see the Bible come to life at this moment. Some of you ask, and in fact, I see a lot of comments out there saying, but is God abandoning Israel? Absolutely not. Is God acting and is God working with Israel? And not only is he working with Israel, despite this conflict, but he is also working with the nations. And that's what it is. And now you will realize why I am saying what I am saying. When you get to Genesis chapter 16, that is, the continuation, it is said that a son will come, that what Abraham wanted so much will come. But what happens? Does something happen along the way? What happens is that we will look at it more closely next week, chapter 16, in more detail, step by step. What I'm going to do now is make a transition, because there's something that happens in the middle. So are we going to see that in the middle in the book of Amos? That's why today I want to focus on that. Because exactly everything that's happening with Israel is what we're seeing biblically between chapter 15 and chapter 16. When we look at chapter 16, we see that Abraham is finally going to be given the promise of the son. Remember that Sarah couldn't give birth. His wife couldn't give birth. So who comes in place of Sarah? Hagar. Who was she? An Egyptian. But it's Sarah who comes, not Hagar. She comes up with that great idea to say, look, I can't, but take my servant, take my maid. So Abraham goes, meets the maid, and then she gives him a son, right? A child? And they give him a name. Do you remember what his name was? Ishmael? Then that one appears with the name Ishmael. When does Ishmael appear in the scriptures? Later, we are going to see something that was actually there, which is like a connection with the past, because in some way it will connect with that one. Son of Adam. Remember that we have seen that Adam and Eve also had children, and those children had names. And one of them was called Esau. Remember that he had also been in a rather complicated situation, and that for the first time, human blood had been seen on the face of the earth? That had never happened before. It was the first time a human sacrifice was mentioned on the face of the earth. Until then, sacrifices had been animals, not humans. There were also breakings of plants. And you might say, but breakings of plants? Yes, breakings of plants, because they were used to cover those who had been naked. But I don't want to get off track. I just want to make a connection from one topic to another. So when does Ishmael come? In the Bible, it tells us in chapter 16 that finally the son whom God had promised to Abraham appears through Esau. You are going to tell me today, just like many are saying today. But then, the first one was Ishmael. And we might nod our heads and say the first one is Ishmael.
Yes.
But what is the but? In the but, there's something very important, because God doesn't leave any loose ends. And he is in every detail, and in every detail, we have to pay close attention to him. When he is saying yes, but it's not Sarah's first. Why? Because the firstborn had to be from Abraham's legitimate wife, not from the servant. So Ishmael is not counted as the firstborn, but the one who will come later is counted as the firstborn. It might seem strange, it might seem illogical, it might seem not focused, what I'm saying, but what is ordered is exactly what God is doing. That the firstborn is Isaac, even though Isaac came later than Ishmael. And you say it's not logical, it's not coherent, it's not human, it's not right, it's not serious. But that's what God determined. God determined it, and that's it. There's no room for discussion about that. God determined that the firstborn had to be from Sarah. Period. Here we say nakuda. There, I taught you another word in the European language. If you want to say period, say nakuda. So there's no point. There's no need to keep talking or debating. There's nothing to discuss or argue. The firstborn was supposed to be from Sarah. Another one comes before, even if he comes earlier in time. He doesn't count as the firstborn, he's counted as just another, but not as the firstborn. I said that the firstborn had to open Sarah's womb, and so Isaac is the one who does that. So all the promise of the land will come upon him. Why? Had Abraham gone out with Sarah, and in Abraham was the promise to inherit that land that we had seen on the map the previous week. Now then, remember that all that land, he said, I will give it to you, but remember that suffering will come, that your future generations will be slaves in another land, and they will be there for many years, and they will suffer, and they will die. But all of this needs to happen, and you will die in a good place alongside your fathers. In other words, you will be remembered. In other words, the Lord was giving Abraham news that he wasn't so happy about. That's why in chapter 15 it tells us that Abraham had a tendency. Fear. He felt fear. So between chapter 15 and chapter 16, I want us to read Psalm 83 now. Even though Psalm 83 comes from a later time, it comes from a later time because it's connected to this. Remember that something happens with Ishmael and with Hagar, and it says that the servant was somehow harming Sarah because Sarah couldn't give birth. So it was like the servant was somehow positioning herself with more authority in front of Abraham's legitimate wife. Sarah complains to Abraham saying, hey, do something. And finally it says that he takes and puts. And then he puts that load on the animal, puts Hagar, puts the child, and lets them go into the desert. And then, later on, the Lord reaches her in the desert and says, hey woman, don't give up, don't suffer, don't give up. I'm not going to let your son die, but I'm also going to make a nation out of him. Now then, pay attention. We'll cover that later in Genesis 17. It says I'll make a nation from him too and give him several promises. But it's all of this that's happening here, and all of this is what's happening today in the nation of Israel. The root is found in Genesis 16, Genesis 17, but without being able to understand Genesis 15, so we won't be able to understand what's happening today with the nation of Israel. Many people, many leaders, many prophets, I'm not quite sure how to say it. I hope you understand me. They try to decipher it from a mystical point of view, from the point of view of, let's see what the future holds for me. But actually, the future is already written. There are some things that still need to happen, but for the most part, the future is already completely written. And we have it completely written in the scriptures. We don't have to go crazy trying to figure out what's going to happen in the coming days. We don't need to have a magic wand. We don't need to receive a special gift from just one person who says, oh, he says such and such is going to happen. I'm not saying there isn't. Obviously there is. And I'm saying yes, there is. Or the gift of presence. Prophecy still exists. The gift of planting churches like Paulo used to do. Saul in the past exists. The gift of the pastor exists. The gift of administration exists. All 5 ministries that the Lord established in the scriptures, obviously each one is being fulfilled perfectly. But there are some who have strayed from God's model. So certain things have been mixed. Some have mixed the idea that planting churches makes someone an authority. Super authority, which is not the case. Oh, like head of heads, and like father of fathers, which is not the case. He's simply another colleague. He's someone who has a bit more experience in all of this. And since he listens to what others are doing, he can contribute more, just like Pablo used to do. He would write a letter to the Ephesians. He would write a letter to the Thessalonians. He would write a letter to the Corinthians. Because he listened and he knew, look, what are they doing over there? This is happening in that place. That is happening. He didn't see himself as the head of all heads. The super apostle? So, no, I think right now we're actually going off track. It's not because we want to, or maybe it's not intentional, but just because it's written. Because the scriptures say that in the last days, in the latter days, many will come and will confuse thousands. So I always say, and my prayer is, Lord, let me not be part of this product of confusion for thousands. And how can one make sure that they are not part of all that confusion? It's by being balanced. It's by seeking the Lord. It's by having a perfect balance in the scripture and in the spiritual. I can't just be super spiritual and ignore the scriptures. I can't be super spiritual and not know what they tell me. The Old Testament isn't just for Jews while the New is for the church. I can't say that if I really know both. So, there's something that's not working right. Does that mean you didn't get it? Is there something you didn't get? I can't say the Testament is already obsolete. Only the New is the one that works. I can't just live by training and preparing, having a perfect marriage, having healthy children, having a good business, I can't just work on that. Because I'm not preparing people, I'm not preparing my brothers, we're not preparing ourselves for what's coming in the next few days, for what's coming in the future. And right now, what's happening in Israel, there's a global silence in the Christian world, which particularly worries me. It worries me, it scares me to hear silence from the recognized global leadership. Not raising a voice, not making a call, or not saying, hey. It's time for us to look at Israel. It's time for us to pray for the conflict in Israel. It's time for us to raise offerings for our brothers in Israel. It's time for us to support the chosen people. There isn't any. There is, as there should be. I'm not saying there aren't any, but you could count them on your fingers. What exists makes me very happy. There are many brothers like you who don't depend on being told, go and do this. But rather, you simply do what the Lord puts in your heart. You go and do it. The Lord tells you, I have to pray for Israel, and you go and pray for Israel. Regardless of what you're seeing on the news, regardless of what the enemy tries to put into you through the screen, fire hate. The enemy wants to put hate in you, wants to put resentment in you, wants to put lies in you, wants to put anger in you against the chosen people. That's the plan. I want us to go now to Psalm 83. Let's go quickly. And I want us to read this because it's very important. Many people say this is being fulfilled, but Psalm 83 still has a long way to go. Because it talks to us about all those nations that come against the chosen people. Let's look at it, you and I, right now. And I'm not going to tell you whether it's being fulfilled or not. But what I am going to tell you is that it has started. It has started. And it didn't start today. It started some time ago. Now you'll see. I'm going to drink some water. I'm going. Psalm 83. Let's read in chapter 1. And it says, O God, do not keep silent, do not be quiet, O God, nor be still, for behold your enemies roar, and those who hate you lift up their heads against your people. They have conspired cunningly and secretly, and have taken counsel against your protected ones. They have said, come, let us destroy them, so that they are no longer a nation, and let there be no more remembrance of the name of Israel. For they conspire together with one heart against you. They have made an alliance, the tents of the Edomites and the Ishmaelites, Moab and the Hagrites, Gebal, Ammon, and Amalek. The Philistines and the inhabitants of Tyre. Also the Assyrian has joined with them. They serve as an arm to the sons of Lot. Selah, do to them as you did to Midian, as to Sisera, as to Jabin. At the brook of Kishon, who perished at Endor, they were made like dung for the earth. Make their captains like Oreb and Zeb, like Zebah and Zalmunna. all their princes who have said, "Let us take for ourselves the dwellings of God." My God. Make them like whirlwinds, like chaff before the wind, like fire that burns the mountains, like a flame that consumes the forest. Pursue them with your storm, and terrify them with your whirlwind. Fill their faces with shame. And let them seek your name, O Adonai. Let them be ashamed and troubled forever. Let them be dishonored and perish. And let them know that your name is Adonai. You alone are the Most High over all the earth. What we just shared is very important, what I just read. But I'm going to use, if you allow me, I have a board here that I want to use to show you an example model. Exactly how it is. This topic about the map, about what the psalm is, Psalm 83. Okay? If we have to base ourselves on what the book of Psalms is telling us there, it's talking to us about several things. We would have to do a very broad analysis, but exactly. As I told you, what I'm going to share here, I'm going to share between Genesis 15, between Genesis 16, and what's happening here in the book of Psalms. Here's the question, is it related? It has a lot to do with it, because notice that here we are being told about nations that will be born much later. But their roots are here. What is the root they have here? It's the root against the nation of Israel. Israel had not yet been born. Israel had not appeared on the scene when they were already planning to exterminate Israel in advance. And today, as of today, we have Israel on the scene because Israel was born. But many of those peoples mentioned there in this psalm no longer exist, but yes, territorially, the Spirit remains in that same place. Did you understand me? Let's try an example. See if you can reach and appreciate it. Can you see it? Yes, you can. Let's suppose that what I'm drawing here would be like the state of Israel, the current state of Israel. Okay, this is what we have today. Remember that we said what was promised to Abraham was much broader, but not exactly what the Jewish people called Israel have today. That's what was promised to him. Does that mean that at some point they're going to recover everything that was mentioned in Genesis chapter 15, or what? That they're not going to recover it? A question for the Lord. Because in the book where we are told about Revelation, and when we are also told in Zechariah, when we are also told in Jeremiah, and when we are also told in Daniel, we are given the boundaries of what the later era will be when the Messiah is on earth. The map is different. It's neither this one nor the one that was promised to Abraham, nor the one we are going to see after all this conflict. Because after all this conflict, geographically, this whole area changed. So none of these three are the ones we are seeing today. A year ago, we had one Israel. Today, almost a year after the conflict, we have a different Israel. And so you have to pay attention. What is the Bible teaching us with all of this? That's why I say that God is working with Israel, but He's not only working with Israel, but also with the nations around it. Let's suppose that here, for example, we have the Sea of Galilee, okay? Here we would have the Jordan River, and over here we would have the Dead Sea. I hope you can see this little map that I'm making for you, kind of rough that I'm making here. This little map right now. The Bible tells us in Psalm 83 about several people who say, let's join together, let's unite. It says that they joined together and began to plot To go against, let's think about what harm we can do. Nowadays, if we take the map here, from here upwards, we will find that we have a place called Lebanon. Nowadays. It is the one who, 3 days ago, to be more specific, received a surprise. After almost 11 months, firing missiles at Israel every day, launching missiles. Israel said, enough, we're activating a plan now. And you know what happened? A company appears and nobody knows who founded it. There are money movements and nobody knows who is buying. There's an owner of a company and nobody knows who she is. A man from India appears and then completely disappears from the face of the earth. He doesn't leave a single trace that he was the one who delivered these vipers, these little devices, and these devices start to explode one by one, not amongst civilians, but within the armed terrorist service of the nation of Lebanon called Hezbollah. I want you to understand me up to this point. So nowadays we have that name called Hezbollah, which is a politically terrorist group settled in the territory of Lebanon. Right next to Lebanon, we have a nation called Syria. To this day, Syria is another nation that is involved in a very, 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 very strong financial conflict from which it cannot recover. It's under a dictator who doesn't want to leave his position, and the people are going further and further downhill. The Bible tells us about a destruction in Damascus and says that after that destruction in Damascus, the way is open for entry into the city of Jerusalem. Salim, Syria is there. If you go to Syria today, you will find a lot of rubble, a lot of rubble. Down here we have what is known today as the territory of Jordan. From here and down here. Here we have from here, more precisely, all the territory that we know as Egypt. And here in this territory around here, let's see where I am here. Here we have Gaza. This is Israel, and Israel's Neighbors Act. Now then, Psalm 83, what does it tell me? Does Psalm 83 speak to me? Okay, it tells me the following. It mentions the sons of Lot. Who were they? It tells us that the sons of Lot were Edom and Ammon, the Ammonites. So we have, look, let's go to the book again. I want us to go to Psalm 83. It tells us this. I'm taking the cap off the marker. Do not be silent or still, God, for your enemies roar, and those who hate you rise against your people. They have consulted cunningly and secretly, and have conspired against your protected ones. Who were the protected ones? Let's go, Genesis chapter 15. Genesis 15. Here was Canaan. Today Canaan disappears, and all of this is called Israel. Okay? The land God promised Abraham in chapter 15 to give to Isaac. The generation of Israel, here we have them present, Israel. Obviously, you understand everything that's missing, right? But it says that all of these begin to gather together and say, come, let us destroy them so that they are no longer a nation, and there is no longer any memory of the name of Israel. Why did they conspire with one heart against you? Have the tents of the Edomites and the Ishmaelites formed an alliance? Okay, look at this. Here we have Edom. In ancient times, Jordan didn't exist. It was Edom, and here we had Moab. Ancient land, the Moabites and the Edomites. These two were going to come together against Israel. They were planning to come against Israel. That's what Psalm 83 tells us. It also speaks to us and says the tents, the Edomites and the Ishmaelites, Moab and the Hagrites, Gebal, Ammon, and Amalek. The Philistines and the inhabitants of Tyre. The Philistines were here, where Gaza was. Philistines. Okay, those from Tyre were here. Do you see how the map keeps changing? But notice that it's still exactly the same. Tyre, Philistines against Israel, Tyre against Israel. So far we have Tyre against Israel, Philistines against Israel, Edom against Israel, Moab against Israel. But we also hear about the Assyrians. And where were the Assyrians? The Assyrians were here, Assyria. They came against Israel. And so this whole area known as Assyria, the ancient one, or Iraq or Persia, I think you can't see from here anymore. So it was all the Assyrians who were going to come against the territory of Israel. So Psalm 83, what it's showing us today is that the modern nations called Lebanon, called Syria, called Jordan, and not a nation but a territory called Gaza. All the enemies of Israel consult together. All of them. Notice, absolutely all the countries surrounding the territory of Israel consult together. So that this may no longer be a nation. So that this may no longer be a nation. The leader of Lebanon, you may have heard his name, called Nasrallah, leader of Hezbollah. He said it's good that the prophecy is being fulfilled. A few years ago, about the return of the Jews to their land, I heard clearly it's good that the prophecy of the return of the Jews to their land is being fulfilled. How can an enemy say it's good that this prophecy is being fulfilled? Because when that prophecy is fulfilled, then all the Jews will live in this territory. And for him, he says it's easier to eliminate them because then we don't have to carry out attacks in different parts of the world. We catch them all in here. That is to say, they consult, they know the scriptures, they know the prophecies. The enemy knows the word of God. He knows the scriptures. He knows how the next days will unfold. He knows what will happen in the coming days. But notice that there is a purpose, and just as the psalmist wrote, in the same way, our prayer must be for all these peoples. Because in reality, all these peoples no longer exist. Moab doesn't exist, Edom doesn't exist, Assyria doesn't exist, Philistia doesn't exist, Canaan doesn't exist, but the Spirit exists. Psalm 83 speaks to us territorially. All of these want to rise up against the chosen people, against your chosen ones. But look at what Psalm 83 verse 16 says. It says, fill their faces with shame. Lord, fill their faces with shame. And let them seek your name, O Adonai. Let them be ashamed and troubled forever. Let them be dishonored and perish. And let them know that your name is Adonai. You alone are the most high over the earth. In other words, he's saying, he is not God. That they only know the true Yud Habav Yelva Adonai. The creator of the heavens and the earth, the only one. In other words, what is happening here, this map that you are seeing here, is part of the end times. It's what's happening, what's going to happen, and what's always been. It's the root of the hatred toward the people of Israel. Now you know that this very same spirit is here territorially. It's the same spirit that was exported to both Europe and America. It's the same spirit that today gets into schools. It's the same spirit that gets into congregations. It's the same spirit that gets in here. I was thinking last night and I said, there's a nation that's not very far from here, that's located in the area between Europe and Asia, that shares the land, We go there every time. We go once a year and we have the tour of the book of Revelation. Because the churches or the congregations or the Kehilot from the book of Revelation were there. And so we go there once a year and we travel around that country. When we travel around that country, there's something that happens where I realize in the spirit that there is no freedom for the believers. The believers there cannot be free. There may be congregations, but there is no freedom of expression, evangelism, or sharing the message. And you see the city as more cheerful, important, beautiful, like a place for shopping and fun and good people, since it's the capital of that nation. Do you know who I'm referring to? I'm referring to the capital of the nation of Turkey, called Istanbul, where the most important center and the most important icons are mosques. Thank you. Where Islam is the main authority of that nation. Now it seems that they can live and coexist in harmony, but the reality is that they can't. The reality is that there is no freedom to be able to express and walk the streets saying Jesus is the Messiah. Because there is another leader, or there is another God, or there is another image that has come in and said, this is God. And nowadays, all those who are conspiring, who are planning, believe in that foundation. And that foundation is going to be established precisely in what is going to come from Ishmael onward. According to what we will continue to see next week, Book of Genesis chapter 16 and Genesis chapter 17. This is as far as we will go today. I want you to understand what we are seeing, to understand how this situation is arising. But you have to know that this space that the Lord chose, that the Lord established, will prevail. It will remain. Because it says, when I manifest myself among them, the nations around will know that I am Adonai. So we are in a time where you and I have been privileged to be able to see what lies ahead, to be witnesses of what is happening in this incredible time. Let the Bible be open before our eyes. Do not be confused. Do not be easily misled. Do not let hatred rise in your heart. Simply go to the scriptures. And when you feel that you are being tempted, when you feel like you are saying, oh, these Jews, oh, these Israelites, calm down. Go and say, Lord, take control of my spirit because I don't want it to rise up. Rebellion against your chosen ones, regardless of whether your chosen ones make a mess, create chaos. Are you still gonna go ahead with your plan to return again to that physical place, to that land? So no matter what they do, it won't change God's plan. That the Messiah will return again to the city of Jerusalem. So God bless you all. See you next week. And we continue studying the book of Genesis. Remember that we have a lot. And if you don't have a place, if you don't have somewhere to gather, try to find a Yalom house somewhere you can gather. I just want to pray for you. And then those who are gathered in their homes will be able to have a time of prayer. They will be able to have a time of worship. And there is what the Lord tells you what you have to do. God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, thank you for this time. Thank you for this opportunity to share your word. Thank you for teaching us today that everything that is happening, the Bible already warned us about it. Grateful, Lord. Bless each and every one in the name of Yeshua. Amen. May the Lord keep you. May the Lord bless you. May the Lord make his face shine upon you and give you peace. God bless you. Shalom.